Unreal Engine is in trouble, and honestly, this is way bigger than most people realize. Because this problem doesn't just affect Epic Games, it affects AAA studios, indie developers, Fortnite creators, and even people learning Unreal Engine right now. For years, Epic has built a reputation as the company developers could trust. While other engines focus more on monetization, Epic felt different. Unreal Engine felt like it was made by developers for developers. And because of that, Unreal Engine 5 completely exploded. Studios started switching over in massive numbers. Developers built entire careers around it. And some people even saw Unreal Engine as the future of game development itself. But recently, something started to change. And a lot of developers have noticed it. Behind the scenes, Epic Games has been making moves that are starting to make people uncomfortable. Conversations about money, about influence, about control. And after a $1.5 billion investment into Epic Games, those concerns got a lot louder. Because the gaming industry has already seen what happens when companies start putting business first and developers second. We watched developers lose trust in Unity almost overnight. And now people are starting to ask a pretty scary question. Could the same thing actually happen to Unreal Engine? Okay, so now before anyone starts typing in the comments, no, I'm not saying Unreal Engine is becoming the next Unity, and I'm definitely not saying Epic Games has suddenly turned into some evil corporation overnight. Reports started appearing that made developers stop and pay attention. One article actually claimed that Disney executives were reportedly interested in acquiring Epic Games altogether, and one quote in particular started spreading across the internet like wildfire, waiting for the right moment. That was a phrase being used when Disney discussed potentially making a move on Epic Games. Now, to be clear, this is still speculation. Nothing has been confirmed, and there's no evidence of a buyout happening right now. But for a lot of developers, that wasn't really the point. The point was that for the first time, people seriously started talking about a future where one of the biggest entertainment companies on earth could have even more influence over the company behind Unreal Engine. And once those conversations started, people began looking at Epic Games very differently. Because suddenly, this wasn't just a partnership anymore. It became a question about where Epic Games could be heading next. If you actually look at Unreal Engine today, things actually seem pretty good. The engine is still improving, new features are being added all the time, more developers are switching over, and Epic is still investing heavily into Unreal Engine 5, with Unreal Engine 6 on the horizon. So, if everything looks good on the surface, then why are some developers suddenly feeling uneasy? At a time when developers are becoming more and more frustrated with other companies, Epic seems to be moving in the opposite direction. They gave developers access to some of the world's most advanced technology in this space. They funded indie projects through mega grants. They pushed Unreal Engine into film, television, and virtual production. And perhaps most importantly, they weren't constantly looking for new ways to squeeze money out of developers. That might sound like a low bar, but after what happened with Unity, it mattered a lot. Because when Unity announced its infamous runtime fee, developers realized something terrifying. Years of work, entire studios, millions of dollars could all be affected by a decision they had absolutely no control over. Trust basically disappeared overnight. And while Epic looked like the safe alternative, something interesting was happening behind the scenes. Something that most developers weren't actually paying attention to. At least, not at first. Because everyone was focused on the success of Unreal Engine, Epic Games was becoming something much, much bigger than just a game engine company. And that's where this story starts to get interesting. Because over the last few years, Epic hasn't just been building a game engine, they've been building an ecosystem. If you think about it, Fortnite isn't just a game anymore, it's a platform, a social space, a creator economy, place where brands, musicians, movie studios, and millions of players all meet in one digital world. And Unreal Engine sits right at the center of it all. The same technology that's powering indie games is also powering blockbuster movies, TV shows, virtual production stages, architectural visualizations, and even military simulations, believe it or not. And I'm just going to quickly throw in Avatar, because it's one of the most amazing films in the world, and it was built in Unreal Engine. How crazy is that? So, Epic's influence grew, and so did the number of companies that wanted a piece of the pie. Then came the announcement that got a lot of people talking. In February 2024, Disney announced a $1.5 billion investment into Epic Games. Now, on the surface, that doesn't really sound like a bad thing. In fact, Disney described it as a partnership designed to build a huge entertainment universe connected to Fortnite and powered by Unreal Engine. Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar, Disney, all connected through Epic's technology. And if you're an investor, that sounds pretty incredible. But if you're a developer, you might want to hear something completely different, because when one of the world's biggest entertainment companies invests $1.5 billion into a company, people naturally start asking questions. What does Disney want in return? How much influence comes with that kind of investment? And perhaps most importantly, will Epic prioritize developers and always stay focused? Or are they starting to switch and shift towards something much bigger? That's where the concern begins. Not with what Epic has done, but what Epic has become. Now, to be fair, a lot of people think these concerns are completely overblown, and maybe they're right. After all, Epic hasn't suddenly changed Unreal Engine. They're still releasing updates, still improving the engine, and Tim Sweeney is still in charge. So why are people actually worried? Well, the answer really isn't Disney. It's what Disney represents, because developers have seen this story before. A company that builds an incredible project, creators flock to it, the platform grows, investors arrive, business priorities start to change, and slowly, the people who helped build the platform stop feeling like a priority. Again, I'm not saying that's happening at Epic, but that's exactly why some developers are paying attention, because once the trust is gone, getting it back is almost impossible. And if you think that's an exaggeration, just look at Unity. For years, developers trusted Unity with their business. Their careers, entire studios were built around that engine. Then one announcement changed absolutely everything. Overnight, developers started questioning whether they could even trust the company behind the tools they relied on. Not because the technology suddenly got worse, and because the relationship changed. Because game engines aren't just software, they're commitments. And when a studio chooses Unreal Engine, they're not choosing it for 6 months. They're choosing it for years, sometimes an entire decade. And that means every major decision at Epic matters. Every partnership matters. And every shift in direction matters. And recently, some developers have started noticing a direction they really didn't expect. Because the more you look at Epic today, the less it looks like a company focused purely on game development. And the more it looks like something much bigger. And that brings us to Fortnite. Because whether you love or hate it, Fortnite may have been the most important thing Epic Games has ever created. Not because it's a successful game, but because Epic no longer treats it like a game. They treat it like a platform. Think about what's happened over the last few years. Fortnite isn't just a battle royale anymore. It's concerts, live events, custom game modes, user-generated content, brand partnerships, movie crossovers, and now with UEFN, creators can build entire experiences inside Fortnite itself. In some ways, Fortnite has become a glimpse into what Epic feels like the future looks like. And that's where things are getting interesting, because when Disney announced their investment, they weren't talking about making a new game. They weren't talking about making a new movie. They were talking about creating a massive connected entertainment universe, one built using Epic's technology. And if that vision becomes successful, it could completely change what Epic Games focuses on in the future. Because right now, Epic does an amazing job at serving game developers. But what happens if Epic's biggest opportunities stop being from game developers? What happens if the future becomes entertainment platforms, virtual worlds, massive branding partnerships, creator economies? And what happens when those opportunities become worth more money than traditional game development? Again, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but it is a question more and more developers are starting to ask, because companies follow incentives, and incentives shape priorities, which leads to another question. If Epic Games becomes one of the biggest entertainment platforms in the world, will Unreal Engine always remain the #1 priority? Or will it become one piece in a much larger machine? Because if that ever happens, the relationship between Epic and developers could start looking very different. And that's exactly why people are paying attention right now. Now, to be clear, none of this means Disney is taking over Epic Games, and it definitely doesn't mean Unreal Engine is doomed. But there are a few things that have caught the attention of developers. The first is pretty obvious. Money, because a $1.5 billion investment isn't pocket change. Companies don't spend that kind of money just for fun. They spend it because they believe there's an opportunity, and usually a return. The second thing developers are paying attention to is influence, because influence doesn't require ownership. You don't need to buy a company to affect its direction, especially when you're one of the biggest entertainment companies on the planet. And then there's the third thing, and this is the one that I think is the most important. Trust. Because trust is the reason so many developers chose Unreal Engine in the first place. Not because the graphics looked amazing, not because of Nanite, not because of Lumen, but because developers believed Epic understood them. Because Epic's success was tied directly to their success. And right now, some people are worried that that relationship could slowly change. And that's why this conversation matters. Not because of what Epic Games is today, but because of what Epic Games could become. So, is Unreal Engine actually in trouble? Honestly, I don't think anyone can answer that yet, because right now, Unreal Engine is still one of the most powerful tools ever created. Developers are still switching over, studios are still using it to build games, and Epic is still pushing the technology forward. But that's not really what this video was about. This video isn't what Unreal Engine is today, it's about what it could become tomorrow. Because developers trusted Epic. They trusted the company building the tools they relied on, and understood what mattered to them. And for years, the trust was well deserved. But for now, the first time in a long time, some people are starting to ask questions because of the massive growth that Unreal Engine has. New opportunities, new priorities, and potentially new risks. Maybe none of these concerns amount to anything. Maybe Unreal Engine continues to dominate the industry and nothing changes at all. And personally, as somebody who has a YouTube channel based on this content, I genuinely hope that's the case, because I plan on providing more and more videos around Unreal Engine for a long time to come. But if there's one thing the gaming industry has taught us, it's trust can take years to build, and it only takes one bad decision to lose. So here's my question to you. How do you feel about Epic Games today, and how do you think we will feel about it in 5 years from now? And also, do you think game developers are overreacting to this news? Or is there genuine reason to be concerned about where Epic Games is heading? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Catch you next time. Peace.